Bram Stoker's Dracula, based on the 1992 Francis Ford Coppola movie and released in 1993 in an 8-bit version on NES, Game Boy, Game Gear, and Master System. And a 16-bit version released for the SNES and Mega Drive. I can't believe that they went so hard with promoting an R-rated Dracula movie. The 8-bit version sees you play as Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker in what can only be called a watered-down Castlevania mixed with Super Mario. You run around Transylvania, smashing blocks and ground pounding to collect projectiles, weapons, and fighting monsters like skeletons, bats, ghosts, zombies, and undead knife-wielding psychos. The Game Gear and Master System games are pretty much identical, besides the pixel detail. The Game Boy has about the graphics you'd expect a Game Boy to have, but the NES version has some changes, like the enemies not spawning in certain places and a way harder first boss fight. In all the other versions, there is a puff of smoke indicating where the shadow demon will attack from, letting you get in one hit before moving out of the way. But in this version, the smoke is absent, making it way harder to attack or dodge. Since they're similar enough, I'm going to be judging all the 8-bit games together. And so for the atmosphere, I'll give them a 2. It's spooky enough with its enemy to deliver a classic monster atmosphere. It feels like a Dracula game, which is great for this time of year. But for the gameplay, the 8-bit gets a 1.5. It's a working enough mid-grade platformer, but when it auto-switches between the projectile weapon and the melee weapon when an enemy is close enough, and the floaty jumping hold it back from being a good platformer. The 16-bit version proves that with more bits didn't always mean a better game. The 16-bit versions both start with a battlefield silhouetted by a red sky. Banners wave as bodies are seen impaled through stakes. Lightning flashes as it pans to a shadowy, armor-clad Vlad the Impaler in his demon muscle armor. Unfortunately, this is about as cool as the game seems to be. As you start, the Mega Drive version, you can add or take away lives and health, but the system is balanced, so you cannot max out both. This time, you play as Keanu Reeves' Jonathan Harker, but starting in some kind of medieval tavern with rats and bats attacking. Oh, and drunk dudes throwing bottles at you. It's hard not to get hit because the attack is so close and in a downward motion. After talking to Van Helsing, you can continue outside, and the enemies outside aren't much better. Just some fantasy-looking guy and big spiders. The boss, who I think is supposed to be Dracula's coachman from the movie, is really easy to defeat just by standing close to him and wailing on him. Finally, on the second level, we get some skeleton enemies, and more bats, and tiny spiders that are annoying because they blend in with the background. The music is kind of cool though. After exploring around, you come to the second boss, which is a dragon. Out of anything spooky they could have chosen, they chose a dang dragon. The level after that was the last level I played. It started off kinda cool, with Dracula's brides chasing Keanu, but they just started to kill me really quick, and I still had to play the SNES version. The SNES version starts off the same, but there is no balance system with the lives and health, so you can just max them out. This one starts in the same kind of fantasy tavern, but with dogs and those fantasy looking dudes from the other game. The same plot. This one also has drunk guys hurling bottles at you. It's also kind of funny when he exits, he has to squat. The second level has mostly only the fantasy guys and bats, no spiders. And in the level that the Mega Drive had its first skeletons in, it has more D&D background characters. Finally, in the second half of the stage, some skeletons show up. And instead of falling into a pile of bones, a nice little touch the Mega Drive version had, they just explode like every other enemy. I didn't really play it much further. It was pretty much exactly like the Mega Drive version, except with worse enemy variety. For the atmosphere, I'll have to give the Mega Drive a 1.5 and the SNES a 1. The Mega Drive has the upper hand, with not as many fantasy-looking spear wielders, but the genericness of a Dragon Boss and a Dracula game counts against both of them. They both get a 1 on the playability. If the 8-bit version was a low mid tier, this version is even lower than that.